Hey, what's up guys? Just wanted to shoot a quick video. I'm actually outside on one of the old spots. Some of you may recognize it. I've shot many of videos here before I moved out to the country. And it's nice. It's nice to get back to old times, you know? Someone's gonna come around the corner and just be like, what are you doing? So I honestly kind of miss it. So anyway, this is my M1123. I've got the completely stock 6.5. I take that back. I did do the Paradox by Design cooling mod on it. Flip the camera around. You don't want to look at my ugly mug. I'd open the hood for you, but there's really not much of a point. There's nothing to see. It's a 6.5 Detroit. Oops, didn't mean to zoom in there. Work in progress. I'm doing some stuff. A winch is going to go in there, blah, blah, blah. But wanted to make this video real quick because this is pure cope, by the way. I'm coping with this video. But everyone and their brother tells you should take out the 6.2 or the 6.5 in a Humvee, put something else in there because those motors are just terrible. And I want to make the case for not necessarily jump into that because it's a massive amount of work. And, you know, it's not something just anybody can do. And you may want to just stick with the stock motor. And there's very few arguments online for doing that, so I want to do that. Now, I'll preface by saying, got my hand in there. I'll preface by saying I am not the all original numbers matching guy. I couldn't be further from that. In fact, I kind of resent that. You know, I've done a lot to this Humvee. A lot of it's aftermarket. Cars are meant to be enjoyed and driven, especially old military surplus kind of junk. They'll never be worth a bunch of money, in my opinion, at least not in my lifetime. They might go up in value a little bit, but I'm here to have fun with the thing and just live life. I don't care about having an original military vehicle. That being said, if I could do an engine swap just by snapping my fingers, I'd probably do it. There's a lot more to it, so I'm rambling, but here's some reasons to keep the original 6.5 Detroit diesel. The first reason I'll say is money. Even if you're extremely crafty, you know, you got to buy the new motor. So it's either probably going to be a Cummins or a Duramax or a Power Stroke. Haven't seen a lot of Power Strokes, but I'd say the most popular ones are Cummins and Duramaxes. Duramax is probably being the most popular. You know, for most people that's not free. Maybe you just got one laying around. But if it's a Duramax, you know, you got to buy this, probably a standalone ECU. You got to do a bunch of wiring. You got to do, I don't know if you have to do an adapter plate on that since it's GM, but the Cummins, for example, you probably have to do an adapter plate for the 4L80E. I haven't looked into it too much, but there's a whole lot of stuff you have to do, and that is not free. I would be prepared to spend anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 if you do it craftily. And if you're going to pay someone to do it, good luck. I mean, you might as well just not have a Humvee, because there's way cheaper ways of getting a Cummins or a Duramax or a Power Stroke. Reason number two is the stock motor isn't that bad. You hear a lot of bad things about the 6.5 and the older 6.2. The thing is, on a Humvee, a lot of those electronical things on there that would fail on the civilian trucks have been taken off. In fact, you pretty much just got the starter and the fuel shutoff solenoid and the glow plugs and the glow plug controller. Other than that, there's nothing electronic left on this motor to fail, and the motor itself is actually a pretty good hunk of iron. It lasts a long time. There's nothing to it. It's pretty low performance. You know, one gripe is the compression is pretty high compared to newer diesels. But as long as your glow plugs are working right and your starter's working right, that's not that big of a deal. And in this rig with 40-inch tires, not re-geared, no turbo, no nothing, I'm still getting about 11 to 12 miles to the gallon. Now that may sound terrible, but keep in mind, it's a rig on 40-inch tires with portal axles that probably weighs like 7,000 pounds and is shaped like a cinder block. 12 miles to the gallon really is not that bad. For example, I've got a Jeep YJ, much lighter, inline 6, you know, slightly more aerodynamic on only 35-inch tires and properly geared, and I get about the same gas mileage. Now, that is gasoline versus diesel, but the fuel savings you're going to see going to a Duramax or a 12 valve, they'll be there. Although, quite personally, this is just my opinion, I don't think you're going to double your gas mileage or anything like that. I've got a 12 valve in a first gen Ram, for example, far more aerodynamic, better gearing, everything, and I get about 18 to 19. So stick the same thing in a Humvee, you know, with these massive tires and all the things I just mentioned, I'd expect maybe to get 15, I think. It'll be interesting in the comments. If you've done a motor swap, let me know what you get. But I just don't think all of a sudden you're going to be getting 25 miles to the gallon in something like this. The other thing is power, of course. I'll kind of tie this in with my reason number 2, you know, but power is pretty terrible in these 6.5s, although without re-geared on 40-inch tires, it still moves it down the road. I can still cruise at highway speeds, and really, you know, just the way the Humvee works with the portals and everything, or geared hubs, you know, don't get mad at me in the comments. It's not really meant to go 100 miles an hour and, you know, have 800 horsepower. Now, they do apparently hold up pretty good to high horsepower, but I don't know. I think the power is just adequate, and when you're off-road and 4 low, which is where these things are at home, you've got plenty of power because of the gearing, you know, the gear reduction in the transfer case, in the geared hubs, the gear reduction there. You've got plenty of power, and I'll tell you one other thing. When you increase power, you usually start breaking stuff, and you know, breaking stuff on the trail is not fun. So sometimes it's good to have a slug of a motor and no horsepower, because you never break anything, and that is fun. A third reason is it's a lot of work to swap a motor. Split Builds has a great video on it. He put a Duramax in a Humvee, which, once again, this video is pure cope. I'm not trying to say that I wouldn't swap a motor if I could. I mean, I know I could, but if I wanted to dedicate the time and resources to it. But it's a lot of work, you know. I would expect anywhere from at least, I mean, if you don't have a job and you have nothing else to do, it's going to be at least 2 months, I think. Maybe quicker, maybe, depends on how good you are, but you got to do some fabricating, you got to do a lot of wiring. You know, if you're going to put a 12 valve in there, those things are way longer. Your oil pan is probably going to be hanging down lower. I think you have an issue with the front drive shaft clearancing that oil pan, so you got to relocate the intermediary bearing, carrier bearing, or whatever you call it. There's a lot to it. It's not as simple as it might seem in your head. And I think for the average guy who's more of your weekend warrior like me, they got a full-time gig, you know, they can't just focus on a Humvee. It could be years if you ever complete the project at all. And I found sometimes, you know, the best project car, the best toy is the one you actually get to go play with every weekend, every day, whatever it might be, as opposed to the one conceptually in your head is going to be super awesome when it gets done. That's why I drive around with green doors. I don't like the look, but it takes a lot of time to take those suckers apart and paint them. I will one day, but I'm just enjoying it for now, driving it around. I don't really care. All right, reason number 4, if I counted correctly, the 6.5 actually sounds pretty cool. It's slow. It's unbelievably slow, but it doesn't sound half bad. The idle especially. Let me show you. Keep in mind, that's on a non-turbo with the muffler still intact, but it's a pretty nice deep rumble, and it's definitely not the worst sounding engine I've ever heard in my life. You know, there's certain engines that are just meant to be swapped out because they sound so horrible and you can't stand to listen to them. But the 6.5 actually sounds great, and off-road it sounds really good too. It's just not a high revving motor, it's real nice and deep. It's kind of, I don't know, it's just pleasing to the ears. In my opinion, some of these newer diesels, they just don't sound as cool. Although I will admit, I love the sound of a Cummins 12 valve. Somebody's getting robbed over there. But the fifth and final reason, and I hate to be this guy because I really sound like the stereotypical boomer, but AM General did design it to have the 6.5 motor. Now, if they were going to go back and make the Humvee in 2024, they probably wouldn't put the 6.5 in there. But there was a fair bit of research and development with people who, as a whole, are probably a good bit smarter than me that went into that to make that 6.5 work in there and fit and be somewhat serviceable and, you know, not wear stuff out prematurely and blah, blah, blah. Now, I know it's not perfect. There's definitely things they could improve upon. But at least you know with that, it's probably going to work okay, you know. Military surplus stuff's not the best quality, but they designed it to have a fairly long service life and not be terrible. And sometimes when you shoehorn a motor into a different vehicle, you're going to have a lot of issues. Just because it's one guy trying to R&D everything, and, you know, making mistakes is part of that process. Now, hope you guys enjoyed the video. One day, when I have more time on my hands, and probably more money, I probably will put a Cummins 12 valve in there, honestly, because I love those motors. And I love the way they sound. But right now, I'm fully content with the 6.5, and you know, I'm so content that I can make this video coping about it for 15 minutes or whatever it is. And I'm just happy to keep running it. So for all those of you who are looking to get one of these things, or you already have one and you just feel like you're not going to have any fun until you put a different engine in it, I think you should chill out on that. Just enjoy the boat anchor that's in there and not hate it too much, because it could be worse. I've driven things that are slower, and it works great off-road. It sounds pretty good, and once again, it was designed to have that in there. So don't feel like you just had to go out and spend a bunch of time and money on doing a motor swap. That is awesome, and more power to you if you do it, but here's 5 excuses not to do it. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you watching, and I hope you can like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.